Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Let's Chat Books. Now, there's a pretty big part of myself in which I do not want to talk about talking about books or something like that, at least not for a while. And I don't necessarily want to have videos to tell you, what to think about whatever. So I do feel some mixed feelings to try to make a video like this, but maybe I can introduce a bit more of myself and a bit more of what I'm intending to do with this. So here I'd like to introduce a concept called getting to the conversation. Now, I'm sure that somebody else out there has coined some kind of concept like this way before I have. I'm sure that it is not original or whatever at all. But what I call getting to the conversation is getting to the point where we've read enough of a text or we've understood it just enough to begin to have a conversation. Now, I call it that because where I work, teaching children reading, or primarily teaching children reading, one of my colleagues, he focuses more on getting them to read quite a bit so we can hear some fluency in how they read. But for me, it is profoundly more important to hear them be able to have a conversation about some texts. Now, if I ever doubted my approach, I felt much stronger about it when at one point when I went to go to watch an English corner because I had asked somebody to help me do a favor. So not that long after that, she asked me if I can go attend an English corner at a cafe. And so I went to the cafe. I went to several of these. People talk about where they like to travel. It's always one of the common popular topics for English corners and such. Well, one time, whenever this woman hosted, the one who I had asked a favor from, we were reading Uncle Tom's Diary. And I believe that we were reading at the part where the various slaves were going to be auctioned off, I believe. And I mean, maybe I should have the book in front of me, but I almost feel that to make this video, at least for how new I am, I might as well just try to make this in one take without a super lot of preparation. Give it off the cuff with the thoughts in my head, edit this a tiny bit afterwards, and put this online. Now, when we were reading, we were all put in groups. About 4 people a group, about 4 groups. So I guess about 16-ish of us. We just kept reading the text over and over and over again. And then we stood up in front of everybody and we just basically recited the passage. I was so very confused. The host had told us, the one who invited me, the person I asked a favor from, she wasn't always the host. In fact, I was the host the following time, was that this part of the text meant a lot to her, but her feelings and ideas about it were so very, very vague. And I wish that I could have imagined what touched her from this text, but we never quite got that. I mean, maybe if I kept reading the text and I wanted to try to extrapolate from it what might have meant a lot to me and then try to imagine that it probably meant a lot to her. But we just sat and we just kept reading to ourselves over and over again. So afterwards, I told her, why not I host next time? And I think I'd make a separate video on the text that I chose. I mean, I'll tell you, it was Thank You Man by Langston Hughes. It's always one of my go-to texts for this kind of thing. Well, I'd hosted many of these English corners. And so I always look for the part of the text about what questions, what conversations can we have with the text? So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what. I've been choosing short stories and I'm having a glitch on my computer, so I'm unable to look at the different lists right now. But if I've done so far 2 different videos on Carol Shield's short stories, Segway, and Various Miracles, well, there could be something in that I might try to pinpoint to find that to make the conversation from. Now, I'm going to have to do short stories for a while for various reasons. But as I looked at even a longer story, actually it's not a long story, but it's just average novel length, Forever 14th by Jenna Evanovich. I mean, I could find a few moments in there that stuck out to us that we can find relatable. So you have to find those moments. And so I didn't realize just how good of a service I was doing for others. And that's the funny thing, is that if you make these videos on YouTube, in some level, we're supposed to like BS you, the audience, And in reality, I want to create a space to hear your opinions, build a community from that. But perhaps before I can do that, I must first tell you what I think about things first, right? I guess, supposedly, something like this. But I realized how good I was doing hosting English corners years ago because at work, when I was in the office, in the teacher's office, the students would come in, all the middle school students would come in, and they'd stand in a line and they'd take turns reciting passages from memory. But I didn't realize that that's truly how they viewed literature and that kind of thing. And so whenever I'd host these English corners, it was never my perspective. I would do the reading. Maybe others might try to read a little bit or try to read a part that maybe confused them or something like that, ask me some vocabulary. And of course, my goal is to have these conversations about literature. Whereas other people's goal was just to go to a place, have a bit of community, whatever that might have meant for themselves. And it often just meant getting free English lessons or whatever like that, just something like that. I know that maybe some places they charge like a pretty cheap rate to come in and that type of thing, because if not, like maybe 50 people come in and, they're not really trying to have a positive attitude towards what the place is trying to do. They're there for their own reasons. And so you might not see that that's how some people might just go and treat it with literature, just to read a text, try to memorize it, and then just try to recite it. So regardless of what it is that I'm looking at, I try to find the moments to try to have conversations about. There's always something that we can learn with literature. I mean, whenever I look at, let's say, Sherman Alexie's The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven, one part is maybe we might talk about going to a 7-Eleven or other 24-hour convenience store at night and what that maybe feels like. I mean, do we feel scared to be inside of such an area at night? Or does the cashier feel? Have we ever been that cashier? And there's always something that we can sort of learn. But you might not ever go up to a stranger and talk about aging. But then if you use a story, then you can. Then these things are able to come out more. So, I mean, I've definitely have seen it inside of personal experience. And I mean, oddly enough, I do not pretend to be the greatest reader. But frankly, even at the times where maybe I've read the most of my life, it was to reread things, and it causes a reading with purpose. When my family was inside the US for about 11-ish months, I mean, I'll be 100% honest. There was like a few texts that I might have read the whole thing, and I've read a few good novels, and hey, I enjoy these. And maybe I read a few other novels, and it's, I'm not fully grasping every little bit that I'm reading. But there's also becomes a reading with intent, a reading with purpose. If you know that you're going to go somewhere and then you have the questions made or somebody makes some questions and you end up discussing these things and you have a nice jovial conversation about the whole thing. So to me, that's also what the whole thing is about. Just get to the conversation. Means get to that point where we can discuss it, where you can find something, where you find something that sticks out to you, that it might stick out to somebody else. And this is a different topic perhaps, but I do believe that literature in a sense does teach us a bit of freedom, and it does create an environment for, a bit more, I don't know, I want to say liberalism. I don't mean like a kind of a, like maybe some of the very modern American-ish definitions of liberalism, but I just mean just a more free world in the sense that when we have these discussions, we develop empathy. We develop empathy for the characters. We develop empathy for each other. So I think that's enough for now. And I think that maybe I'd make a video about Langston Hughes' Thank You, Ma'am. Not necessarily a review. I mean, it's only a 3-page story, and I think that it's really made for, about 7th-ish graders. So, I mean, I think everybody here can read that story within about, 5-10 minutes. But it is one of my go-to stories if there's a new audience. And I can talk about why that is. Maybe I'd make a video on that tomorrow. I do feel that YouTube and the algorithm and stuff reward me to try to make videos where I'm trying to almost tell people what to think or something like that, which I want to be careful about because I want to make an environment where other people's opinions matter as well. People do not necessarily want to be told what to think even more, but I'm just trying to explain to you a little bit of my approach about what I've done and what I've seen has worked. But I didn't even know how well or why it worked until much later. And much later, whenever I realized how and why and all that it worked, I was kind of amazed myself. But I think being able to have these conversations with literature and stuff like that is quite valuable. I mean, I would hope that every person here on this platform who makes reviews of various art, video games, movies, books, I hope that they're all able to conduct these conversations at the audience where I'm talking to you, but am I talking at you? And is it in a way that can come back and forth? And that, I think, is supremely important as well. Well, thank you and have a wonderful day.